Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Steven Universe Retrospectives and happy birthday to me! Yep, today is my birthday and what better way to celebrate it than by looking at episodes 73 and 74 of Steven Universe / the final episodes of Season 2, Too Far and the Answer. Now, to recap, the last time we left the Crystal Gems, they were getting ready to stop the cluster. What had happened was that they managed to catch Peridot and while it was a successful capture, Peridot said that they apparently needed her for something that they didn't know about. Steven grew concerned, so he freed her, and after gaining her trust, Peridot eventually wound up opening up to the gems and revealing that she had originally come to Earth to check on something called the Cluster, this giant artificial fusion whose I want to say gemstone or cluster of gems, was located at the center of the Earth, and once it gained form, the Earth would go pop. As such, since Peridot is pretty much stuck on Earth without any other options, she has no choice but to work with the gems to try and destroy the cluster, which is where we are now, as in the last episode, they went back to Greg's barn and are now trying to build a new drill to get to the center of the Earth using whatever spare parts they can find in the barn, which is where Too Far comes in, as in between episodes, Steven gave Peridot a tape recorder, which she has been using to make new logs and insult everybody. However, in Peridot's, infinite wisdom, she wound up insulting Garnet as she asked her to unfuse since her being there made her uncomfortable. But as a result of this, she wound up getting put on a leash. She can still do work, it's just her range of where she can and can't go is now limited. However, to entertain her, Steven and Amethyst go to talk to her, and Amethyst being Amethyst, she finds herself laughing at a lot of what Peridot says, especially since a lot of what she says is common idioms, I think, on Homeworld, like how she calls fingers touch stumps, feet gravity connectors, except, a butt is still a butt, but pretty much it just makes Amethyst laugh, and it gets on Peridot's nerves. But little by little, she does start warming up to it. However, all that's really put on hold because, to make the drill, they kind of need a drill. And as such, Peridot suggests that maybe they can get a drill from the kindergarten, which no one really has a problem with, but Garnet doesn't want Peridot going to the kindergarten without a chaperone since, they still see her as the enemy, and, don't want to leave her there alone. As such, Amethyst and Steven volunteer to go with, and so they go to the kindergarten, and upon arriving, Amethyst and Peridot just continue kind of jabbing at other gems. Or more specifically, Peridot's jabbing at other gems while Amethyst is laughing at the way Peridot's doing it. Which I kind of find amusing. Peridot little by little starts kind of liking that Amethyst is starting to laugh with her. But Amethyst especially likes when she starts kind of trashing on the other gems, which I'll get to when I'm done with this because I do have my own thoughts on that, which might be a little surprising, might not be, I don't care. But bottom line, it continues going on but eventually, once Peridot is talking about it, she says that, the funniest thing, Amethyst, is you don't have to listen to any of them. And Amethyst is like, oh, stop. And Peridot further explains that an Amethyst gem is, it outranks Pearl. It outranks everybody. She thinks Steven is a half-breed abomination. Pearl is a Pearl, and Garnet, she doesn't know what to classify Garnet as. But Amethyst, she's she's an Amethyst quartz soldier. You think Jasper last time we saw her. She's supposed to be big, buff, and burly, and she's basically she's supposed to be a big, strong, loyal servant who can kick ass several ways from Friday. And Amethyst is supposed to be that way. And Amethyst, and on top of that, she can do all that. She can do all that stuff herself. She can kick ass. She's highly capable. She has access to a wide range of abilities. And Peridot thinks that's extremely impressive, despite the fact that she's defective. And she says that too. And Amethyst suddenly stops laughing. At which point her voice gets lower, and she starts asking for more details. And yes, Peridot does explain something. It turns out, Amethyst is, as she said, defective. She stayed in the ground too long, and she's a runt. When she came out, she's basically, because she was overcooked, her form is just shrunken down. But despite being able to do everything that a normal quartz amethyst can do, her capabilities themselves because her size was stunted, hence why she's defective. And Peridot continues stating that to Amethyst, stating like, you just stay in the ground too long. Genetically speaking, you're wrong. Which, the more she talks, the more pissed off Amethyst gets, to the point where when they're ready to get the drill, she takes her anger out on that by using the whip to just slash it off. As if they take it back, but even when they do bring the drill back to the barn, Amethyst is not willing to talk to Perry, and while Peridot is trying to continually engage her, well, Amethyst is now giving her the cold shoulder, and as Peridot's confused by this, Steven tells Peridot, look, you really hurt her feelings with what you said back there. And while Peridot first is disbelieving, well, the more she sees Amethyst ignoring her, well, the more she starts believing it, and she starts feeling guilty, much to her own chagrin, as she doesn't want to feel guilty, and just starts trying to double down on her behavior as she starts throwing a hissy fit. However, as construction goes along and they're getting the drill formatted to act as, well, the drill, things kind of go wrong as Peridot accidentally hits a switch and the drill activates. Steven's able to get Peridot out of there, but and jumps in to try to shut it down himself, but the drill is out of control even with Steven in it, and when Amethyst goes to check and see what's going on, well, the drill almost hits her, with Peridot only barely managing to get Amethyst out of the way. As such, Steven does manage to shut it down, but when everything's calmed down and Peridot is lying on top of Amethyst, she just immediately freaks out. It's like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it, it was an accident. And Steven's just like, oh, we know it was an accident, it's fine. And Peridot's like, yeah, that was an accident too. So, yeah, everything calms down, though apparently Pearl and Garnet weren't around for this, so after they freak out, and Garnet blames the cows, they decide that they're going to try and put seatbelts in the next model, but the episode ends with Steven talking with Amethyst lamenting that she was saved by Peridot, and when Peridot comes to confirm, yep, it's lucky I was there, she finally kind of breaks down and apologizes to Amethyst, albeit in a rather creative way, as she uses a tape recorder, and it turns out she recorded a log where she stated that she concluded that every one of the crystal gems is defective, but Peridot herself is no different. She failed her mission, she's now stranded on Earth, and now she has to resort to working with the enemy in order to survive, and even she can't do that right, considering that she hurt Amethyst's feelings without meaning to. And so she says, the rest of the recording's like, I'm still learning, I want to continue learning, and I'm sorry. Which, yeah, it's honestly sweet, and Amethyst finally says, you know what, yeah, Amethyst says that Amethyst thanks her, says that she's still a nerd, and goes on, and the episode officially ends with Steven asking Peridot how she feels, and she says she feels big, which is to contrast an earlier line she said earlier. I might talk about that during this animation, but whatever. But anyway, this brings us to the answer. This is kind of something I should probably bring up. While the gems are working on the drill, they end up staying at the barn, so for this and the next few episodes, they're all at the barn, with the title cards now being actually set at the barn, and the answer is no different. But this one is not a plot important episode. Rather, this is another flashback episode, and what's going on is that it's Steven's birthday. And Garnet is, well, she's excited about something, to the point where when the instant the clock strikes to midnight, she wakes him up and wants to say it to him. As such, Steven thinks that she's there to tell him that, you're going to reveal to me that you're a fusion of Ruby and Sapphire? And you already know about that. But what Steven doesn't know is how Ruby and Sapphire met. And so, that's the basis of the episode. Garnet telling Steven the story of how Ruby and Sapphire met. And it's actually a pretty good one. What happened was, Ruby and Sapphire originally were essentially in two different leagues. Pretty much back in the ye olden days, when the gems came to Earth to start a colony and pretty much just going to try and turn the Earth, they were going to colonize Earth. That's what I'm going to say. They were going to back when the gems were trying to colonize Earth. They wound up hitting a snag, specifically the crystal gems, who at this point were just a small rebellion who were impeding progress. As to try and deal with the issue, a group of diplomatic gems were sent to Earth to try and deal with it, to try and figure out what to do, and among those gems was Sapphire, who was a rare aristocratic gem who was valued for her ability to see into the future, and three Ruby guards who are meant to act as her personal escort, one of which is the Ruby we know. Pretty much, in the beginning, their relationship was professional, and while our Ruby had her eye more on the ball than others, well, we see that Rubies are most likely just like rough little kids. They just like rough. Excuse me 1 second. Sorry about that puppy emergency. Also, heads up, I'm probably going to puppy housing soon after this because I let one of my dogs out in front. Anyway, as I was saying, Rubies like to roughhouse, and they're just talking about how they're going to beat up the rebels the first time they see them, and in their roughhousing, they accidentally knock one of the Rubies into Sapphire, specifically the Ruby that we know. And while everyone gasps and Ruby tries apologizing for it, Sapphire's like, it's okay, it was bound to happen, which, yeah, this is something that we should bring up. apparently, when it comes to Sapphire's future vision, I talked about. I think I might have mentioned this before, but how Sapphire's future vision differs from Garnet's is that Garnet can see multiple possibilities. Sapphire's limited to one. She sees one singular future and has pretty much just resigned her fate to it. And we kind of see that from the outset. Pretty much based on this first time we see her in the flashback, she's very solemn, reserved, barely interacts with anybody, and just kind of feels resigned, which in a way kind of makes sense. If you have your entire life laid out before you, no surprises, no secrets or anything, yeah, you're probably going to be very bored and probably going to be very detached from everything because you know what's going to happen next, how it's going to happen, and at the end of the day, you're just not going to be. You're just going to become. It feels like you're going to be detached from your own life because it's not like you're feeling. It's not like you're living your own life. Think of it like Doctor Manhattan from Watchmen. Despite the fact that he does actually go through the motions, well, he already knows how everything's going to play out, and at this point, he just is like, whatever. He just become attached. It's kind of depressing. But regardless, she still has to play a role in it, and as such, when Sapphire arrives, she's actually here to visit one of the head honchos, which I might as well talk about since Haley spoiled it. One of the leaders of the Gem Empire, Blue Diamond, who is on Earth as part investigating the rebellion. As such, Sapphire goes to Blue Diamond and Blue Diamond wants to know what's going to happen. Like what's going to happen what's going to happen with the rebellion, and Sapphire assures her that the rebels are probably going to attack this place very soon because they're on a sky arena. They're going to take out 7 gems, including two of Sapphire's Ruby guards and Sapphire herself, but shortly after that they're going to be subdued and the rebellion's going to end. So Blue Diamond is relieved by that and thinks that everything's going to be going okay. Sapphire steps aside, and from there she just kind of waits. And what I like too is that from the instant that our Ruby smacked into her, you can see that there's a slight crush. Like she's like when Sapphire tells Ruby to just wait there while she goes to talk to Blue Diamond, our Ruby just gives her a sideways glance, and as Sapphire is just kind of waiting for the inevitable, they both just kind of talk with with Sapphire saying this is a beautiful planet. Shame we won't be able to see very much of it, and Ruby's like, well, we could look around. We could probably look around. There's still some time, and Ruby and Sapphire just kind of smirks. It's like, yeah, it's a nice thought, but which again I like because it fits more into the detached aspect of it. There are things that she'd like to do, things that she wants to do, but she's just resigned herself to her fate and doesn't really want to fight it, which I think it's sad but interesting. It kind of helps a nice little way of showing more of her character. I like that. But true to her word, the crystal gems arrive. In this case, rose quartz and pearl. And just as Sapphire predicted, they start taking out gems left and right, taking 1, 2, 3, 4, and then that's when the rubies come. And part of the reason why they send so many rubies in one is because they regularly fuse. But back in the ye olden days, fusion was only between gems of the same type. Well, probably it's still the same case. And so all 3 rubies fuse together and charge at Rose Quartz, who promptly knocks them aside, causing them to unfuse, and Pearl ends up poofing 2 of the rubies, leaving our Ruby and Sapphire as the only ones left. As such, Pearl gets ready to attack Sapphire. Sapphire thanks Ruby for her service, and it's at that point Ruby realizes that Sapphire realized that she was screwed, and Ruby pretty much says fuck that and rushes to and pushes Ruby out of the way just as Pearl slashes down. And in the process, they fuse into Garnet. And I'm just going to say this right now. I love early Garnet's design. It's very much clearly a mishmash, haphazard design. Most of the looks we've seen for Garnet and other appearances have usually been more stable. She has a regular outfit. Her hair is much more solid, if it makes any sense. It's very clear that the fusion's really... the Garnet we know has more thought put into her design whereas this early one... This feels like a mishmash of Ruby and Sapphire, as her clothes are just kind of torn in some areas. Some parts don't cover all the way. She's missing a shoe. She only has one boot on. She has tights that are ripped. It's clear that this is just, like I said, a mishmash. No thought went into this. And I'm not saying that in the sense of a design-wise. I mean, like, it's clear that this is the very early design this is very early Garnet. A surprise that happened. Nobody expected it. And the form very clearly reflects that, which I like. I like that. And when Garnet does form, she's immediately confused as to what the hell's going on, but in that confusion, she ends up, unfusing. She ends up unfusing. However, Despite all this, Pearl does try to go in for the kill, so to speak, but when Rose Quartz sees it, she's like, wait a minute. And then when she, and, well, and as, because she's in awe too, she has never seen anything like it either, but that momentary distraction gives her enough clarity to realize, oh, we are outnumbered here, and so they retreat before they get subdued. As such, Ruby and Sapphire are just like in shock and disbelief at what the heck just happened, and everybody in the gem court is thinking that it's just disgusting that these two different gems fused at all. But the one most furious is Blue Diamond, who wants to know why the hell Sapphire's vision didn't come true. Excuse me 1 second. Again, puppy stuff. Anyway, as I was saying, yeah, Sapphire really has no idea why her vision didn't come true, and she's just as confused as everybody. However, Ruby takes the full brunt of it and does state that this is all her fault, and Blue Diamond's response is, yeah, clearly, how dare you fuse the member of my court? You're gonna be broken for this. But shattered. That means death. She's gonna kill her, is what I'm saying. And while Ruby is perfectly willing to accept her fate, it's Sapphire's turn to pull a fuck that as she grabs Ruby's wrist and makes a run for it, jumping off the sky arena and falling to the earth below. And Ruby is not exactly happy about this either, because her job was to protect Sapphire, and she's no longer at the sky arena. As such, she tells Sapphire they gotta find a way to get back her up there, but Sapphire's like, no, they were gonna try and shatter you. Ruby's like, but there's a ton of me, I don't really matter. But unfortunately, there's no turning back. They're stuck on Earth, and the Sky Arena, well, it floats. There's no getting back up there easily. So they're now stuck on Earth, and unfortunately, neither know what to do. Ruby is, well, a Ruby, so her job really only extends to the most basic stuff, whereas Sapphire, like I said, she sees the future, but she only sees one singular future, and all of this was not in her vision. This was not what she saw. She expected one particular vision, but thanks to Ruby's intervention, now something else is happening. So she really has no idea what the hell's going on. Excuse me 1 second. Again, sorry, puppy-related stuff. Anyway, as I was saying, Sapphire has no idea what's going on, and, well, the unknown factor of this causes her to freeze up. Quite literally in this case, as the ground beneath her freezes. As such, Ruby ends up taking her. As such, Ruby ends up grabbing her, and it starts to rain. So she decides that they need to go somewhere. Hold on 1 more second. Again, I'm sorry. Again, sorry about that puppy-related stuff. I apologize in advance, and she's still not going to stop. She does not like it when I sit still and talk at the camera for God knows how long. Anyway, anyway, it starts raining, so Ruby takes Sapphire to a cave for them to calm down, and what I like is that when she sees Sapphire's eye, she literally gets hot as she ends up causing a small fire beneath her feet, which they use to keep themselves warm. And well, both Sapphire and Ruby just start talking about what it was like to fuse, and for both of them, it was something, as they said, entirely new. They're both, after all, while Ruby has fused plenty of times, it's only ever been with other rubies. Usually it's just been her but bigger. Whereas Sapphire, she's never fused at all. She's never known what it feels like. But for them, these are two different gems who have now fused. For both of them, this is new territory that they don't expect, and so they just talk about it and just how strange it is, but also talk about how interesting it was, how amazing it probably was, how doing this felt new, how it just felt, and so from this little conversation we end up turning into a song sequence as the rain dies down, and the song is called something entirely new, as it leads to a little montage of Ruby and Sapphire as they explore the Earth, while also them continuing to talk about what it was like to fuse, and just how strange and new it was, and how unfamiliar it was. Again, so sorry about this. Again, I'm so sorry. Anyway, yeah. Anyway, they're just talking about what it was like to fuse and how it felt, how it feels, how different it felt, how their own experience with it. But but Ruby's still lamenting that Sapphire's trapped on there. But Sapphire's like, well, what about you? You're here with me. We're here together, and you can see there's now more of a connection. And honestly, I'll talk about this when I get to my thoughts on the episode, but you can clearly see where the connection between the two is and how it begins forming. And the song starts turning into a hum, which is like a soft version of Stronger Than You, but they start dancing to it. It's nice, it's calm, it's sweet, and it leads to them fusing again to Garnet, this time on purpose. And what I like is that when Garnet first appears, she does not know what to do. Again, she's an entirely new being at this point. She really does not know how to operate as herself. So she's clearly getting the gist of it, trying to get the hang of it, and just when she thinks she's got it, she falls off. She falls off of a hill. It's actually kind of funny. However, her falling lands her right in front of the crystal gems, and the instant she sees them, she's at first terrified. That is till Rose appears and immediately tells her, "It's okay. I just want to know more about you." And well, Garnet Garnet really does not know anything. She says she's scared, she's confused, but she's happy. Why does she feel like this is right? And Rose just responds, "Well, welcome to Earth." And so she begins asking a bunch of questions, like why did Ruby defy fate? Why was Sapphire willing to abandon her duties, and so on and so forth? Like, what is this? And Rose's response is, "Don't question this. No more questions. You are already the answer." It's actually pretty nice. And the episode ends with us cutting back to the present day, with Steven asking what the answer was, and Garnet says the answer was love. And yeah, it's a nice, I like it, so. Alright, my thoughts on both episodes. First, let's talk about Too Far, and my thoughts regarding that. When it comes to Too Far, one of the complaints that I found for this episode was Amethyst's and her reaction. Again, so sorry. Again, I am so sorry. But anyway, let's talk about Amethyst's reaction. One of the complaints I've heard about this episode about Too Far specifically is how, despite the fact that Amethyst likes to poke fun at people and just mock certain aspects of their character, she was getting upset that she got pushed as far as she did. Again, hold on one sec. Again, sorry about that. I'm kind of hitting my limit with this dog stuff. Anyway, as I was saying, when it comes to Amethyst, the people that despite the fact that she likes to make fun of people, she gets angry when something is poked fun at her. Well, here's my response to that. Amethyst likes to poke fun at people, but it's never malicious. She doesn't do it to intentionally make them angry or make them upset. She just likes getting under people's skin. Yeah, she does find some joy in their reactions, but it's never bullying. It's always prodding, just teasing, just messing around with people. And the thing with Amethyst, she knows where the line is. She knows how far she can push it without going over the line. And she never really has. While she does typically like to make fun of Pearl and Garnet for Pearl being a stick in the mud or Garnet being too stern, there are certain aspects about both of them that she will never touch. She will never question Garnet's integrity as a leader. She will never say that Pearl is worthless or that she's wrong for being the way she is. She will always stand up for both of them and offer them support if they need it. And the thing is, while she was laughing at Peridot's antics, she wasn't laughing because she found what Peridot was saying true. She was laughing because she found Peridot herself to be amusing, and she thought that everything she was doing was funny because Peridot's from a completely different culture from Amethyst. Because while Amethyst is a gem, she's never been on Homeworld. She was born and raised on Earth. That is the only world she knows. But Peridot is from a completely different way of life. She has different preconceptions about how gems are supposed to be, what body parts are called, and so on. And for Amethyst, that sort of thing is amusing. And again, I have to remind you that Peridot is not on her side yet. They're only working together out of a sense of convenience. They don't actually there's no big camaraderie yet. But in this case, it's Amethyst finding it amusing that starts to make that starts ingratiating her to Peridot. Because, well, Peridot actually is, well, she finds a kindred spirit in Amethyst. Because she actually likes that someone finds what she's saying amusing. And she thinks it's just good old fun. But the problem is that you have to remember that Peridot is a very socially inept gem. She doesn't really talk to people, and she does kind of exist in her own world. And as a result of this, she kind of does not know where the line is, because to her, these aren't insults. These are facts. She thinks these are objective facts, and she thinks the fact that Amethyst finds them funny is a good thing. The problem is, though, that she starts to not figure out where, because these are objective facts to her, she doesn't know where the line is. And unfortunately, because of that, it does lead to her saying things that are unintentionally hurtful and do get to a major core of Amethyst's self-worth issues, as she claims that Amethyst herself is defective. And again, we've established that Amethyst has body issues, that she feels she is wrong, that she is a mistake. And now to learn further that on a gem level she is actually physically wrong, yeah, it gets to her. It's why she gets so upset with Peridot, because Peridot kind of hit that sweet spot. Yes, Amethyst does call her a nerd or makes fun of her, but it's never. But she does try to get. But she never tries pushing it, and you can feel that. And you see that the more she starts poking fun at her, the more comfortable Amethyst is around Peridot as well, to the point where she does start being more friendly towards her. That she's more able to joke around with her. You can tell that Amethyst really does not mean any harm with what she's doing, and like I said, she never tries to push it. But Peridot doesn't really understand it. She doesn't understand why Amethyst is liking what she thinks is funny. All she knows is that Amethyst thinks it's funny, and she likes that she's making someone amused. So she just keeps going. And it isn't until she says something that ultimately is hurtful that that Amethyst well, that's when Amethyst stops finding it amusing. Because, well, again, there are certain things you just don't do. If a similar thing happened with Pearl, if she said that Pearl was ineffective or useless or something like that, it probably would then odds are I'd have a similar reaction. If she said that Garnet was a mistaken of a leader that doesn't really know what they're doing, that doesn't really know what she's doing, and doesn't really understand how things are going, it might result in a similar reaction. Though in this case, when she said that Garnet being a fusion made her uncomfortable, it wound up with her being leashed up. It's a similar case with the it's a similar case with Amethyst. She wound up pushing the envelope on what she thought she could say, and by the end, it does lead to her feeling guilty. She doesn't like again. It makes sense why she doubles down when she does, because she didn't mean any harm, and like I said, to her these are objective facts. And learning that saying these things actually wound up hurting Amethyst, well, it makes her think, well, she's the one with the problem, not me. I was just doing the right thing. You're all just idiots. It's a classic double down procedure, but the guilt doesn't go away even when she doubles down. It's why when after she stayed Amethyst, she wound up saying, I'm sorry, it was an accident. Because she genuinely did regret what she's saying, but she really did not know how to register it. Which is partially why she most likely used the tape recorder the way she did. Because, well, she can't actually admit in person that she was wrong, but there are ways that she can get around this, hence why she used the tape recorder, which I actually do like, because it helps further along Peridot's character development as she grows closer to the group. Back to the Barn showed her starting to begrudgingly respect Pearl as she realized her abilities actually were of worth and she wasn't just a made-to-order servant. And in this episode, we see her growing closer to Amethyst and learning just what you can and can't do, and that sometimes the truth may not be as helpful as you make it out to be. So it is kind of a catch-22 with that sort of thing, which also does lead us to, but at the very least, I do actually like how things turn out. And again, I will defend Amethyst's reaction. Like I said, she does push it, but she never pushes it over the line. And she does care about her friends and doesn't want to say things that will hurt them. She genuinely cares about them and wants them to be comfortable around her. And so her reaction, I think, to Peridot, I think, makes sense and is justified. So I am going to give her that. But then by the end of the day, I do like that how the episode does end with them growing closer because of this, and Peridot starting to get more of an idea of social cues and what she can and can't do, and what is and isn't hurtful. It's a sweet ending, and I like it. I think it works, and overall, I think it makes the episode enjoyable. So, then we get to the answer. This one is also full of emotion, and if I can give a compliment to the answer for this, I love its stylistic choice. Unlike with the other flashback episodes, which have typically told the story of Greg and Rose, this one is very much like a storybook. From the outset, when we see the rubies and sapphire on the cloud or in the cloud arena, everything is stylized. Aside from the main characters, nobody has a full form. They're all just abstract. Their voices are either knockoffs of Ruby, Sapphire, or Garnet, which is kind of fits into the whole story. Even Blue Diamond, who actually does come the close to having a design, despite the fact that it's opaque and in shadow, is still voiced by Garnet, and that makes sense. We never haven't been introduced to Blue Diamond yet, and so it really does make you feel like it really does feel like this is just a story we're being told, and it makes sense that it would be this way because from Garnet's perspective, the only aspects of the story that are important are the main characters, and what I do like, and on top of that, while this does feel more abstract, it looks colorful, but just distant. But then you actually get to Earth. When Ruby and Sapphire jump to Earth, things are suddenly in more detail. While Ruby and Sapphire still retain their designs, but back on the Sky Spire, they were just one whole color all the way through, just one completely red, one completely blue. On Earth, they suddenly have more shading, more detail. There are more shadows. It really does feel like they're more in detail, and it makes sense because this is where where their lives officially start, where they actually begin living, where they actually do things outside of what they thought they were supposed to do. So I do kind of like the stylistic choices in that regard. And on top of that, the love story between Ruby and Sapphire, it's cute. I like it. What I think makes it work is you can feel the root of the attraction between the two. For Ruby, it's simply serving her duty, and it's simply serving her duty. She's just trying to make her Sapphire comfortable. But from the outset, she's already impressed by the fact that she's speaking to a regal gem who's higher up on the totem pole than her, and who is treating her so calmly. And then, likewise, for Sapphire, you can see the immediate attraction when she and Ruby actually start talking. When Ruby actually starts saying, "Oh, we can visit around," you can see her smiling, like I kind of like you can tell that she's jealous of Ruby. Ruby is living a life that she wants, carefree, exciting, not knowing what to expect. And Sapphire feels at that point that she doesn't have that. She doesn't want she would love that life. She would love to have that sort of thing, but she's just kind of stuck in her role. She thinks there's nothing else for her. It's not until Ruby defies fate and changes the future that things go in a different direction. When she's thrust into a situation that she doesn't understand, she's thrust into a future that she never predicted. This, like I said, the Ruby saving her, them fusing, them on Earth, that was not what she was expecting. And most likely in another universe it did happen that way, but not in this one. In this reality, they were saved. In this reality, Sapphire was saved, and Ruby and Ruby and Sapphire formed Garnet. It's actually a really sweet outcome I think it's a sweet. I think what I like is that after they unfuse and they're confused, clearly this does have an effect on Sapphire. As while she has no idea what she wants, at this point she knows that Ruby saved her life, and that immediately gets her more infatuated with her, because once Ruby stands up for her and says, "Look, it's my fault," and she's threatened to be shattered, Sapphire's like, "No, I'm not going to let that happen." And so she takes her off of Earth. From there, the story is just them getting used to this. Them starting to get to know each other more. Because for both of their perspectives, they're in a situation they just don't understand. Because Ruby, like I said, Ruby's whole deal was protecting Sapphire, keeping her safe, and that's why she defied fate. Because that was partially why she defied fate, not just because of her feelings, but because it was her duty. Though again, feelings played a big part. And so, when with Sapphire, she does not. And with Sapphire, like I said, entirely new territory. Doesn't know where she is. Doesn't know what's going to happen next, and so on and so forth. She's just clueless, but it makes it work so well that we have these two opposites who are trying to understand each other. When Ruby sees Sapphire see her eyes, she's immediately smitten. And from there, they just start talking. And from there, you can see the relationship beginning to build. You see them discussing the fusion, discussing abilities, exploring the Earth together, and being amazed by the wonders about it. And they grow closer because of it. And it's honestly sweet. And yeah, it does feel slightly rushed, only very minimally rushed. But honestly, the way the pacing goes, it's kind of emotional rush. Like they get through everything quickly, but in a way that doesn't feel unsatisfying. Like you can in the music, you can see them growing closer through the conversations. You can see a connection being built, and when they finally form Garnet again, at that point, their connection has got solidified to the point where they trust each other. And as Garnet once said back in the as Garnet once said back in the "We Need to Talk" episode, they found someone that they're willing to trust with the light, and I do like that because it makes it clear that at this point they are starting to feel something for each other. They don't know what it is yet. They don't know at this point, but it's something they would want to explore. It's something they want to see and they want to experience, and that's why they infuse into Garnet again. They want to see where this goes, and at this point, them being Garnet is them officially starting a relationship. It's genuinely sweet. It's nice, and seeing them finally seeing them meet Rose Quartz and her saying, "Don't ever question this. You already are the answer." It's honestly just chock full of emotion and really just gets me right here, and it really is nice. And the way it all plays out, it's just a sweet love story. It's a really sweet love story that showcases the characters well. It showcases what about each character drew the other to them, what set of events made them want to be a part of each other's lives, and how from that moment on they started growing closer and trying to understand each other to the point where they were ready to start a relationship. It's nice, it's sweet, it's chock full of all these good stuff. So yeah, overall, I think it's a good episode too. Too Far I like because it continues expanding on Peridot's character and her relationship with the gems. I like seeing more, and the answer is just a nice, sweet love story. Doesn't serve the overarching story, but it's a nice one that does add more lore to the show while also continuing to expand on Ruby and Sapphire. So, yeah, I think that's about it. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson. I hope I have a good birthday, and I hope to see you next week as we start up season 3 and seeing how Steven actually celebrates his birthday, while also seeing how far the gems come along in building the drill. So, till then, I hope to see you next week. I hope you have a fantastic day, and take care.